24. And depending upon how this goes, we may complete Matthew chapter 24 today. But we are starting in verse 36. So one of the commentaries had this section titled "Here I Come, Ready or Not," which seems appropriate because this is really about Jesus coming back, and some people will be ready and some people will not be ready. And we're going to talk a lot about that as we get into this. It really is about the suddenness and unexpectedness of his return. So let's start at verse 36. And let me just say up front, verse 36 is kind of the key to the rest of it. And so we're going to spend a little time on 36 and then go quicker as we get to the rest of it. So let me read 36 to you. It says, mine says, but of that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Yours may have some additional words in it, depending on your translation, but we will get to that in as we go through the details. So what he's saying here is, the day and the hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only, right? Of that day, and there's all the commentaries at this point, for the last couple of weeks, we've been doing dual commentaries. We're not going to do that today. All the commentaries at this point focus in that this is really focusing on the end times. Yeah, there may be some short-term view relative to the crashing of Jerusalem, but all of them really focus their attention on this prophecy of the end time. So we will do the same here. And what he's saying here is that the day and the hour that he returns is unknown. The signs, as we've seen, are clearly given, right? We've had really from verse 4 all the way to verse 35. We've talked about the signs. We know the season, what was going to happen. But he's saying here again, the day and the hour are not known. And he repeats this over and over. Look at verse 42. Watch therefore, if you do not know what the hour your Lord is coming. Verse 44. Therefore also be ready. The Son of Man is coming is an hour you do not expect. Verse 50. The master of the servant will come on that day when he's not looking for him, at an hour he's not aware of. And then really all the way over in verse 25. Verse 13. Watch therefore, if you know neither the day nor the hour in which the Son of Man is coming. So he's certainly saying you're going to know when you're in it. You're going to know when the tribulation has started, but you're not going to know actually when Jesus comes back and when he returns. Now, let me ask you this question, because we got to get some perspective back from our study in Revelation. So what is the first sign of the end times? When that happens, it started.
Sound of the trumpet?
Which trumpet?
The first one?
The one that- yeah,
The one that's signaling the beginning of the end time.
So depending upon your understanding of the end times, the first event is the rapture. And there's a trumpet for the rapture, perhaps. Right, Michelle?
Yes.
So the rapture is the first thing. If you're pre-trib, right, which means if you believe that the Christians are going to be taken away before the tribulation, the first thing that happens is the rapture. The next thing that happens is the tribulation period, right? This is the 7-year tribulation. And if you remember, halfway through, 3.5 years in, at the first part of it, there's the Antichrist comes. Christians have been taken out. He kind of brings a calm to the people, telling them everything's going to be okay. We're all going to be fine. Don't worry. Everything's good. And then about 3.5 years in, he shows his real colors and starts attacking the Jews and starts turning on all the population. And then at the end of the 7 years, at the end of the 7-year period, this is when Christ actually returns. Right? He comes in with the trumpets and the horses and everything else, right? Comes back onto the earth. We then have the millennial period, the 1,000-year reign of Christ on the earth. By the way, when Jesus comes back, he locks up Satan for 1,000 years during the millennial period. And then at the end of the millennium, then Satan is released. We have the Battle of Armageddon, and then we've got the the New Jerusalem, the new kingdom, the new heavens, everything else, right? So just to get that in your head as we're going through all this, and I start talking about stuff, you'll kind of have that. That's the traditional pre-tribulation, which most Southern Baptists believe that that's the kind of order of events. That's not to say all Southern Baptists believe it, or that all members of our staff believe that, but that's the generally accepted sequence. All right, so when it says here, no one knows the day nor the hour. He's talking there about when he returns, right? When does he actually step foot back on the earth? That no one knows when that is, what that actual time will be. You know the signs, you know the hour, you know the season, what's going to happen, but you don't know exactly what the day or the hour will be. No one knows. Now, I will ask this question. Would it be better if we knew?
No.
Yeah, see, you have to realize God doesn't tell us for a reason, right? Why not?
Because we wait to the last minute.
We'd wait till we'd mess around to the last minute, right? And then the last minute, oh, I'm such a wonderful person, right? I'm doing such great things, right? I mean, it's just incredible. Or we would just stop and do nothing. Well, it always coming. There's no use of me doing anything, right? Jesus is coming back on Thursday. Let's just hang out. These people that when someone predicts it's the end of the world, what do they all do? They all go to the top of the mountain and just kind of hang out and smoke dope and wait for Jesus to come back. I could see this is what we would do. But anyway, it's so interesting here, right? He says, no one knows. He's really talking about no human knows, right? That's the real focus of those words. And not even the angels of heaven. What's incredible about that, right? The angels are the one who are going to be doing all the work at the end times, right? They're the ones executing judgment. They're the one who are bringing together all of the redeemed, and they don't even know when it's going to be. It's kind of fascinating that that's true. Now, again, as I mentioned, there's a translation issue in this particular verse, because some of your verses have some additional words in it. I want you to turn to Mark chapter 13 to see this more better. Mark 13, verse 32, which is the parallel verses. Mark 13:32. So mine says, but of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. So you see here, for those of you who don't have it in Matthew, it adds a little passage, nor the Son. Now, there's no question in Mark that is in the passage, but in Matthew, in some old translations, it's there, and in some old translations, it's not there. But the point is, it is there in Mark, so it's definitely part of what Scripture says. So it's saying here that no one knows the day or the hour, not the angels of heaven, nor even the Son, but only the Father. Now, how is this possible? If Jesus is God, God is Jesus, how could Jesus not know when this was going to happen? How could he not know this if he's God?
And also
I'm sorry?
fully man as well as fully God. And
Yeah,
it's
he's fully man, he's fully God, so why doesn't he know?
the man part of him that does not know. The God
So why
part
doesn't
of
he ask the God part?
it.
I mean, these two parts don't communicate with one another?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I said if he knew, he'd probably tell us. We prayed about it.
So he's afraid to know? I don't understand what you're saying. And my question is, why doesn't he know?
It's like the Trinity. It just is.
Just, yeah. What he says, yeah.
Turn to Philippians chapter 2. This is an important concept, actually, so it's good that we ran into it here. Philippians chapter 2. Philippians chapter 2, verse, let's start at verse 5. Philippians 2:5. Mine says, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant and coming in the likeness of men. Him being found in the appearance of a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. Therefore God highly exalted, etc., etc. Somebody else has, read for me a different version of verse 7. Mine says, but made himself no reputation. Do you have any other words there?
Mine says, instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being when he appeared in human form.
Yeah, that's more better. He gave up his divine privileges. He some of your translations may say he emptied himself, right? He emptied himself of his privileges. He voluntarily restricted his divine attributes when he came down as a man. And in fact, he only knows what the Father desired him to know. He submitted himself to the Father, as it says here, right? He humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death. Go ahead, Patty.
Do you want to hear the Amplified version?
Sure, go ahead.
But emptied himself without renouncing or diminishing his deity, but only temporarily giving up the outward expression of divine equality and his rightful dignity by assuming the form of a bondservant and being made in the likeness of men. He became completely human, but was without sin, being fully God and fully man.
Yeah, so what's captured in this, however, is that he gave up, I like the kind of saying that he gave up some divine privileges, right? You know, he's not omnipresent, right? He's in one place. He's not every place, right? Now, he did see Nathaniel under the fig tree. He could see other places, but he wasn't at other places, right? He's not omnipresent. And in fact, go to John chapter 15, Gospel of John chapter 15, a little more insight into this idea. John 15. My Bible doesn't have a John 15. There it is. John 15:15. He's talking here to the disciples. John 15:15. It says, no longer do I call you servants, for a servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all things that I heard from my Father, I have made known to you. That last phrase, all things that I heard from my Father, I have made known to you. Everything that God told him, he told to the disciples. It goes back to what Matthew said. I mean, what Russell said, right? If he'd known, he would have told them. Yeah. And God intentionally did not tell him because he didn't want it to be known, right? So Jesus in his human form does not know everything because he only knows what God wants him to know while he's here on earth. I just find that intriguing. Go ahead.
Now that he's in heaven with his Father, he probably knows, but at the writing of this, he didn't know.
That's right. That's right. And you know, you can actually go back and look after he returns, he makes some statements that indicate that he does know. Right. So yes, at this point in time, he does not know. His Father has not revealed it to him. But yes, after he returns to the Father, then he does know. You remember, right? So go back to Matthew again. Back last week, actually, in chapter 24, verse 20, and all the verses around it, right? He says, pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath, right? He says, pray that, the abomination of desolation doesn't come when it's winter or on the Sabbath. So in other words, he doesn't know. He doesn't know if it's in winter or on a Sabbath. He's saying, pray that that's not true. Pray that it's not in the winter so that you can get away easier, so that you have an easier time, and pray that it's not on the Sabbath, right? So again, this is not new information that he's passing on to them that he does not know, but maybe new information to us because we don't pay attention to such things. But yeah, Jesus in his human form does not know everything. He only knows what God reveals to him. And as he said, those things he revealed to us. Now, why? And then if you continue reading the verse, right? But my Father only knows this. Only the Father knows this. Why does only the Father know this? Go back to that question again. Why doesn't he reveal this to us? Let me just say it. Oh, we're thinking way too hard. He simply wants every generation to live in expectation, right? To live in preparedness, to be ready. And we'll talk more about that as we get into the rest of the verses. But that's why he wants us to all be ready, all looking forward to it. Now, let me take the other part of that question is, why is God waiting for the end times? Why doesn't he just make it happen now or yesterday?
Because not everyone has heard.
Mhm.
Not everyone has heard. In fact, we read just a week or two ago, back in Romans 11:25, right? Until the fullness of the Gentiles are in, right? The end times will not come. So on the positive side, he's waiting for everyone to be saved who will be saved, everyone whose name is written in the book to be saved. He's waiting for that to happen. The other thing you need to see is turn for a minute to Revelation chapter 14. Revelation 14, verse 18. And here we have the judging angels coming down and proclaiming judgment. So Revelation 14:18. Mine says, and another angel came out from the altar who had power over fire. Excuse me. And he cried with a loud cry to him who had the sharp sickle, saying, thrust in your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. Right? The earth is ready, the earth is ripe. But then look at verse 19. So the angel thrust his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trampled outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress up to the horses' bridles for 1,600 furlongs. So there's two reasons why God is waiting. One, as you've said, for the fullness of the Gentiles, for the fullness of all the Christians to come in. The second is for the fullness of sin, for the fullness of evil, for the fullness of these grapes, such that he will apply the sickle to them, and the judgment will come. So he's waiting on both things. He's waiting on all of the Christians to be redeemed, all the Christians whose names are in the book, and he's also waiting for evil to reach its peak. And somehow it's not there yet, but he's waiting for evil to reach its peak before the end time comes. So that's additionally why he's waiting. And by the way, never forget that God is outside of time, right? 1,000 years is as a day, etc. But God's outside of time. He's not waiting very long. In fact, he's not waiting at all. He is just allowing these things to happen until he moves forward with his agenda. Any comments on any of that, on Jesus not knowing or any of this? You good?
Mhm.
Shake your heads up and down.
Yeah.
Make sure you're awake. Okay, good. All right, let's keep going then. Back to Matthew 24. So, but as the days of Noah were, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. So remember our good friend Noah lived to be 120. Well, no, it was 120 years before the ark floated, before the rains came. What was Noah's job besides boat builder? Do you remember?
Gathering the animals.
Yeah, gathering the animals, right. Boat builder, gathering the animals. But what was his main job before that?
Wasn't he a winemaker?
He was a preacher. He preached. He preached the gospel for 120 years. He kept telling people about righteousness, 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 trying to get them to turn. And how many people turned?
Not many.
Not one.
Many, right? Not one really beyond his family. 8 people. So what Jesus is trying to make the analogy here is, just like in Noah's day, we gave them all the information, we preached the righteousness to them, and still, all they're doing is eating, drinking, marrying, giving in marriage. They're just going about their lives and ignoring the message. They're not helping Noah with the boat. They're not gathering the animals with him, and they're not getting on the boat, right? They're just living their lives just like no big deal. And he's saying the same is going to be true at the second coming. People are going to be living their lives. Everything's going to be fine. Although, although there are people preaching the gospel, there are people preaching righteousness just like in Noah's day. And in fact, there's going to be a great tribulation going on, right? There's going to be, the earth is going to be all messed up in its seasons and wars and famines, and still people are going to be living their lives, eating, drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's amazing for us to believe that more people are not going to turn to Christ during the tribulation, but it's still, the Bible very clearly says it's only going to be a remnant who turn. As we've seen in Moses' day. And that's the point that he's just trying to make here. And then in verse 39, he goes on and says, and they did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will be the coming of the Son of Man, right? It comes suddenly. It comes surprisingly. People are shocked that this is happening. They never believed any of the warning signs. They never believed any of the preaching. And this comes upon them suddenly. So that's the first thing you need to recognize that he's really trying to get across, is this comes suddenly, surprisingly, somehow out of nowhere, even though they've been told over and over. It's funny because people say now, you can't believe that people, in Jesus' day, that they didn't believe who he was. And then you have the scripture that says, even if someone was to rise from the dead, they would not believe, which is what, of course, Jesus did. And now here you have even in the tribulation, after all of this, people still do not believe. The hard-heartedness of people's hearts, in the midst of all these things that have happened is just incredible. Suddenly. All right, verse 40. Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and the other left. The main thing he's trying to say here is simply that life is going on as usual. And now let me ask you this question. Is this a picture of the rapture? 2 men in the field, one taken, the other left. Somebody say no.
We've always portrayed it that way.
Yeah, the problem with it is this would be the wrong timing, because you're talking about here when Jesus comes, this is the end of the tribulation. And so then you're talking about a rapture that occurs at the end of the tribulation. Are you still comfortable with that? Or does a rapture occur before the tribulation, right? However, all of that stuff is wrong, because the taking, one will be taken and the other left, goes back to verse 39. Do you not know until the flood came and took them all away? Who was taken away by the flood?
The unbelievers.
The unbelievers.
Mm-hmm.
We're still talking about the unbelievers here in verses 40 and 41. The ones that are taken away are the unbelievers. He's saying they're going to be taken away with the judgment when Jesus comes. They're going to be taken away. And the others will be left. The others who are left are the redeemed. The ones who are left are the redeemed. They're the ones who will go on into the millennial kingdom, the redeemed, not those who are taken away by the judgment. So we've had this backwards in our head because of some movies we've seen or some other thing that we've seen that's convinced us that this, but this you're completely taking this phrase out of context to use it in connection with the rapture. It doesn't fit at all. You okay with that? Even if you're not, that's what I'm saying. All right, let's go on. All right, so what should we be doing? Verse 42, watch therefore, for you do not know what hour the Lord is coming. Watch, pay attention. Now, I just got to think that this is a command. This is a warning for us. This is something that doesn't just have to do with the watch when you begin to see the tribulation happening. I think it has to do with us watching now. He's telling us to watch because you don't know what the hour is coming. Why is he telling this? What is he saying when he says to us, watch?
I think it's more a message of stay alert, be about the business that you've been called to do. Because you don't know when that end is coming.
I agree with you, Michelle. I think that's a big part of what he's saying here. So what does he want us to do when he says watch?
Like guarding your heart, protecting against protecting against sin coming into your house.
Yep. Certainly also protecting against deception, right? He talks a lot here about deception and false prophets and all those things that are going to happen. I want to just expand it a little bit to say, he's saying here, keep your eye on the Lord. Watch. Pay attention to him. One of the phrases I like is, you really need to see everything through Christ-colored glasses. Right? You need to be seeing the world, all the stuff that's going on, all the stuff in the world and the earth and the climate and the society. You need to look at those through Christ-colored glasses. You need to watch with Christ-colored glasses so that you're not deceived. So that when somebody comes and says, peace, peace, everything's good, you're not deceived. You go, no, I know. I've read the book. I know what's happening. I know what's coming. I just think this is it's one word here, but it's a big word that he's trying to say, guys, you're spending so much time looking around at the world, looking at the stuff that's happening, looking at the evil that's going on. You really need to be watching and keeping your eye on Jesus and on what he's doing and on what is happening through his perspective. Don't be deceived. And in fact, you ought to be overwhelmed with joy if you're watching everything through his eyes. The other half of this, the other side of this, I would say is, do you want to have more impact in God's kingdom? Do you personally want to have more impact in God's kingdom? I think the answer to that question is watch, pay attention, get your antennas up and watch and see and know.
See where God is and then go join him there.
What's that guy's name?
Henry Blackaby.
Yeah, Henry Blackaby, right? Yeah, exactly. And I think, unfortunately, we mostly have our antennas down. We're watching the world, we're seeing what's going on, and we're not thinking, what's God doing? What's going on from his perspective? And I just think that this is a strong word right here in the middle of this that's saying, guys, watch, pay attention, get your antennas up, see what God's doing, Get involved in it. Have an impact. All right. That's my little side trip for the day. Verse 43. Let's keep going in this. It is, but know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into, right? He just gives this practical parable, if you will, right? If someone had known what time he was coming, he would certainly be ready. And he's saying to you, you don't know, so you've got to be ready all the time. Look at verse 44. Therefore, you also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. You've got to be watching, being prepared, not being asleep when he shows up. Now, besides watching, what does it mean to be ready? What does it mean to be ready for when he's coming back?
Install an alarm system. Like that verse, is that 43? If they had known somebody was going to break into his house,
Make the decision for him, for Christ. I mean,
He certainly means that, right? He certainly means, make the decision for Christ, follow him, etc. But what does it mean for us who are following him to be ready?
I would also think that if you've got any unfinished business, family members, letting them know, telling them, if there's something in your life that's not right, it's time.
And as Russell said, don't wait till the last minute, right? If we had known, we might just wait, clean up our act later, or witness to those family members, hey, he's coming next week. You guys really need to do something, right? Turn to Luke for a minute. Luke chapter 21. He gives somewhat of an answer to this, but yours is really good, Tim. Luke chapter 21, verse 34. Again, we're talking again about this whole section of him coming back. But in verse 34, it says, but take heed to yourselves, lest your hearts be weighed down with carousing, drunkenness, and cares of this life, and that day come on you unexpectedly. I mean, don't ignore this verse because of the carousing and drunkenness. Pay attention to it because of the cares of this life, right? This is what is going to wrap most of us. We're so focused on this life that we don't see the day coming, coming unexpectedly. Verse 35, for it will come as a snare on all those who dwell on the face of the whole earth. Watch therefore, pray always that you may be counted worthy to escape all these things that will come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. I mean, what's amazing is that in a moment, we're going to be standing before the Son of Man. Are you ready? Are you ready to stand before him? If it came, what will you be doing when he comes? And will that be okay with you, with him? He's going to come surprisingly, unexpectedly. Are you going to be ready? Are you going to be about his business? Right? The implication is only a fool will not be ready. By the way, I just want to say, years ago, I had a good friend who was actually in the ministry at the time. We started having a conversation about the end times, and the question came up was, are you ready for him to come back? And I remember this guy's answer was, well, I'm ready for him to come back, but I'd like it to wait a little while. I'd like to see my daughters grow up. I'd like to see them get married. I'd like to maybe see some grandkids, right? And this is our thinking. Well, maybe wait a little bit later. We don't have a clue about the glory of his coming compared to the stuff of this world, right? We think, oh, this good stuff that I have in front of me, I really want to get that stuff accomplished. Of course, as he thought about it, he said, yeah, but then of course I'm going to have to see my daughters perhaps get their heart broken by somebody. Maybe they're going to go through a divorce. Maybe they're going to have a child that dies, right? So we have this rose-colored glasses about our future on this earth and our focus on earthly things, and we don't pay attention to Christ-colored glasses on what the second coming is really going to be about, and the glory and the joy and the overwhelmingness of that. So anyway, just threw that in. Let's keep going. Verse wherever we are, 45.
Here it is at verse 36. I guess that reinforces the pre-trib concept of rapture. Just knowing that the part about escaping these things, pray to escape these things.
Right. It does. Or it means that in the midst of them, you will escape them.
Thanks.
All right. Where were we? 45? Yeah. 45. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his master made ruler over his household to give them food in due season? So we got this little parable here to wrap up. He's made these pronouncements, and he's got this little parable at the end about the faithful and wise servant. So let me be clear on this. There are a lot of people who apply this to pastors, but I think it's way more generally applicable to us, okay, as the faithful and wise servant. The master obviously is Christ or God, right? And the master has made you ruler over your household. Now, that word household here is way bigger than just your house and your family, because he's saying that you are to give food in due season. So the more general, I think the better interpretation of this is you have been given stuff by God, and God expects you to use that stuff in the household that you have been given. You have been given a group of people, a impact zone, if you will, for your life, of people that you know, people that you're going to run into, people in your family, people in your work, people you're going to cross paths with in a grocery store, right? And you've been given talents, gifts, opportunities, frankly, the breath of life, right? And he's saying here, are you a faithful and wise servant with that which God has given you to impact the people that God has placed in your path? You have a responsibility to those people he's placed in your life to utilize your gifts and talents, opportunities, your words, your actions. Who then is a faithful and wise servant? Right? That's what he's asking. Remember verse 46, blessed is that servant whom his master, when he comes, will find so doing. And what's the so doing? It's doing what God expects you to do with those talents, with those gifts, with those opportunities. Blessed, happy is that servant whom, when his master comes, he finds so doing. So this is when we talk about being prepared and watching, right? This is what God expects us to be doing. He expects us to be utilizing our gifts, our talents, our opportunities, our breath, to take those talents and gifts and make an impact upon our household, those who he has given us the opportunity to impact. Assuredly, verse 47, assuredly I say to you, he will make him ruler over all his goods. The slice of time that you have here on earth, with the talents and gifts and opportunities that you have, will determine your rule in heaven, will determine your opportunity for service in heaven. Sometimes we think about heaven as a really good hammock. I don't think so. I think God has got stuff for us to do in heaven. I don't know what that is, but you're being prepared for that service here. You're being prepared for it by the utilization of the gifts and talents that you have, such that when you get there, he can give you great responsibility and rule. Now, when we think about rule, we think about, well, there's the rule in the millennial kingdom, which we've been promised, right? That we will rule over those in the millennial kingdom, but there's also rules over the eternal heaven. So again, I think take the word rule as a more general statement of a word you don't like, which is work. He's going to have work for us. He's going to have rule for us. He's going to have jobs for us. He's going to have joyous, wonderful, amazing stuff for us to do in heaven. And he's preparing you for it now by the gifts and talents and opportunities he's giving you to impact the people of those around you. That makes sense? I think that's clearly what he's saying here.
So recently having a conversation with somebody that brought something similar up to me, that our jobs now are preparing us for our jobs in heaven. And what we're doing now is what we'll be doing in heaven. And so when they said that, I went, it sounded kind of bizarre to me. And we talked about it for a moment, in that there's lots of jobs we do now that there won't be in heaven. I mean, so I just kind of blew it off. But that was, it's kind of crazy to hear you mention that we'll have work and things to do in heaven. To me, it's always been thinking of it from the aspect of worshiping and praising and worshiping and praising and just, but I never thought about other stuff, and I'm not sure we can grasp what other stuff is. But it was.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be an engineer in heaven. Okay, I don't think you're going to be, building glass roads and stuff. But the kingdom jobs that you have here, like worship and praise, right? Like serving, like helping, I think those jobs are going to continue. Those jobs that you're good at. And CT, you're really good at some of those jobs, right? Serving others and bending over backwards for others. That kind of job, I think you're going to have in heaven because you're good at it. So I think that's what he's saying. He's not saying we're going to be engineers in heaven, but he is saying that we're going to have heavenly work to do, like the heavenly work that we're doing here. And so do a good job at the heavenly work that we're doing here and learn how to do that well, so that he'll give you even more responsibility to do heavenly work there. That's the point.
It just made me think about how somebody could possibly be thinking that a little bit. But it's just kind of wild that I just recently had that conversation with somebody.
Yeah. All right, good. Verse whatever next is. 48. But if that evil servant says in his heart, my master is delayed in coming, and begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with the drunkards, the master of the servant will come on a day that he is not looking for him, at an hour he is not aware of. Right. So, it's interesting when we get into chapter 25, we talk about those that buried their talents. We talk about the virgins that are not ready. Right. And he's kind of expanding on this point of those that are evil, or those that are wicked, whatever word he uses here, the evil servant, right? The evil servant is the one who is not prepared. The evil servant is the one who is not watching. And if you're not watching and you're not prepared, then you are the evil servant, right? I mean, the two things go together. Turn to 2 Peter a minute. I really think that they put the Bible together in the wrong order. It should be Peter, James, and John, not James, Peter, and John. Don't you think? Anyway, 2 Peter chapter 3. Verse 3. 2 Peter 3:3, it says, knowing this verse, that scoffers will come in the last days, walking according to their own lusts, saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of creation. So here Peter is talking about the same thing. In the last days, people will be saying, well, he's not coming. It's been too long. Everything is as it's always been. Nothing has changed. He's not coming. And it's, And then notice very importantly in there, it says, walking according to their own lusts, right? These are the people who are evil. These are the people who are wicked. And because of that, because of their wickedness, because of their evil, they have no confidence in his return. And so as a result of this, the master's going to show up, ready or not, here I come. The master's going to show up on a day they're not looking, they're not ready because they're not paying attention. They're not aware of that these things are happening. And then verse 51, and he will cut them in two and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. There is a little play on words in here, kind of a crude play on words, but a hypocrite is someone who's double-minded, right? Who says one thing and does another. So when he says he will cut them in two, what he's really saying, he's going to cut that hypocrite in half, the two different pieces of him, one that thinks this and one that acts the other way. The point is that he's going to appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. He's going to appoint him, for those that are hypocrites. In Luke, it simply says, appoint him his portion with the unbelievers, right? Which is the main thing that he's saying, because there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, right? They're going to go into the judgment, and they're going to have that kind of eternal existence, weeping and gnashing of teeth, because they did not pay attention. They did not follow after him. And just like in the days of Noah, they're eating, drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, and they are suddenly taken apart. All right, so we're going to stop there, but I do want to end actually with a passage in 1 Thessalonians. So if you would turn to 1 Thessalonians, please. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. Because I think this is a really nice summary of what we just talked about. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, right at verse 1. It says, but concerning the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I should write to you, for you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so comes as a thief in the night. For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them, as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. So notice that again. Peace and safety. This is in the beginning of the tribulation. That's going to be the message. Everything is going to be okay. Peace and safety. And then the abomination of desolation comes at 3.5 years, and sudden destruction comes upon them as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, right? As we talked about, there's a lot of labor pains, but then finally the final labor pains come, and they shall not escape. Verse 4, but you, brethren, are not in darkness, so that this day should not overtake you as a thief. You are all sons of light and sons of the day. We are not of the night nor of darkness. Therefore, let us not sleep as others do, but let us watch and be sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk are drunk at night. But let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and as a helmet of hope of salvation. For God did not appoint us to wrath, but to obtain salvation through Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us, that whatever we wake or sleep, we should live together with him, etc., etc. Okay. Hey, look at how many verses I did. You guys have got to be really proud of me going through so many verses at once. We're just zooming through Matthew. We're going so fast, I'm getting a nosebleed. Any other questions or thoughts on this part, though? All right, 25, as I said, is a continuation. We look at a couple of parables that have to do with the end times. Again, giving us some, he really wants us to know this is going to be sudden, it's going to be unexpected, and we got to be ready. And that's going to be the emphasis for the next couple of weeks as we go through chapter 25. All right, at this point, I'm going to sneak out and let Tim take over since he so graciously volunteered. Let me say for our part, we'll be leaving town either tomorrow or Tuesday to return to Hampton, so we'd appreciate your prayers for us as we travel. But other than that, we are good. Tim, over to you, sir. And I'm going to sneak out. Thanks, everybody.
Do you have anything for us to pray about?
Traveling.
Just travel?
Just to travel, yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, sorry, yeah, George.
So Patty, we'll start with you.
I'm good.
Good. Phil?
Everything's going good. Ruth's leg's doing fine. She's still seeing